Hey, do you want to turn your book cover into a winning Facebook ad only using free tools? Well, I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to show you how to do it. So, welcome to the very first episode of the Image Workshop, where I take your book covers and turn them into killer Facebook ads. And you can watch over my shoulder every step of the way. This is Canva. It's free if you want to follow along with me, although you can use any design tool you like. You can see I have a dozen or more book covers loaded into Canva here from various authors in a range of genres. We have a thriller, we have psychological suspense, fantasy, space opera, historical fiction, romance, and a children's book too. So that's a good spread to work with. I can already see a few design challenges for me, so hopefully I won't make a hames of it. But the biggest problem I see in your Facebook ads, the one that I really, really want to focus on today, is composition, the framing of the ad, the emotions you want to evoke in readers based on your design choices. And that can be quite different depending on the genre, but also depending on the cover art that you're working with. I don't know how many of these we'll get through today, but there will be plenty of future episodes, so make sure to hit that subscribe button. And watch to the end for your very own chance to submit your book for the Image Workshop treatment. Okay, let's dive right in. I've done no prep here, by the way, being the pro that I am. No prep whatsoever, other than loading the cover and the cover art, because I'll give you an example here. I asked authors to submit their book cover and the cover art without lettering, and then just the link to their book as well, which I'm not putting in the ad. That's just for me to confirm the genre, so we can get rid of that book link. And we're actually going to start off with two at the same time, because that's the only way we're going to get so many done in the relevant time frame. So the second book it's either historical fiction or fantasy. Let me see. I think it's fantasy. Yeah, Roman era historical fantasy. So very historically grounded fantasy. About a queen who has been usurped. And then this is a cozy mystery with a dog solving various crimes, as all dogs do. So pulls apart in terms of genre, but the principles are largely the same. And the reason why these two jumped out at me to start off with is the cover art is vastly different. So we have an illustration here. I think that's Jeff Brown. He's a good illustrator. I see him doing a lot of fantasy and science fiction work. So we got this big illustration here, and it's in that landscape shape, like the shape of the old Facebook ads used to be that shape. Whereas we're working with the newer shape, the square. So there's pros and cons to having your art this shape or this shape, which is more like book cover shaped. And they each presents their own challenges. So I wanted to pick out those two because this is more of a photo manipulation with a cartoon background. And this is more of a kind of a serious, dark illustration in a landscape shape. And show you how we make a square image ad, regardless of the style or size or shape of your cover art. Because this process really does work for almost every book cover and niche. But there's a few little variations in the genres in terms of like the way you handle the price buttons and the fonts and the review quotes and all the things like that, which we might add in various ads. There's a lot of variance there across genre. But let's just show you instead of telling you. So if you want to follow along, go to your homepage in Canva, go up here to the top right, click Create a Design. And what you actually want to select is the Instagram post. Even though we're doing a Facebook ad, if you click Facebook ad, you're going to get this old letterbox shape, this 1200 by 628 pixels, which looks good on desktop, but looks terrible on mobile because mobile phones are portrait rather than landscape. So it's much better these days to do a square ad, which works well on desktop and really, really well on mobile. And mobile will be 60, 70, 80% of your ad serve these days. So it's important to optimize for mobile. But in fact, I actually usually do both and let the system decide. And occasionally, like the letterbox will scoop up a few readers for you. Or it can be good when the square ad starts getting tired, like the frequency goes up above 2. People are seeing it too much and not responding to it. Then the system sometimes automatically switches to the other format, and that can be like a fresh bite of the cherry, if you don't mind me mangling those metaphors. But anyway, if you want to follow along, go to Create a Design, click on Instagram Post, And if you're following along in a different design program, that's totally fine. If you want to use Photoshop or GIMP or BookBrush or any of the others, there's many out there. A lot of them are great. I like Canva because it's free and it's very powerful. I actually have the paid version, Canva Pro, but I'll try and stick to the free features here. So if you are following along, you genuinely can. And I don't think you need to pay for Canva, by the way. I think the free version is surprisingly rich feature set. You can get very far with it. If you end up using it a lot, after a few years, I decided to spring for the paid version and I've no regrets. There's some cool extra features. I'll actually show you one of them in a minute because it's very handy. But let's crack on and get designing. So where are we? Okay, so let's start with this cutie little fella. Some kind of labradoodle. Cozy mystery, all ages, I think. And the challenge we're going to have here is not too different in one sense to the challenge you have here, because often you have a hero depicted on a book cover, and often that hero is front and center on the book cover. And that creates a challenge for us in the ads because, first of all, we need to fill up this white space. So we zoom back a little bit to allow us to manipulate this to drag it out. So just so that we're flush with either side and there's no white space. You don't want that. That doesn't look good. You want to cover up all the white space. And this guy is front and center now. If we just drop it there and then select the book cover. Now, where are you going to put the book cover? Sometimes you see that doesn't look good. So then people try and squeeze it in here somewhere. Not great. You try and put it up there. Maybe they'll pull this down, create some space for themselves. Then they're starting to think along the right way, but still doesn't look good. Why is there a book cover floating in the sky, kind of almost blocking out his eyes there? And then if you make it too small, it's kind of like, why is there a book cover up there? It doesn't make any design sense. And then you start going the other way, and you push it up this way, and you try and squeeze it in down there. Maybe okay, that's starting to look a little better, but the book cover is too small now, because it's going to be like this size on someone's phone, this size on their computer screen, on my monitor anyway. It's not going to be massive, and then it's hard to see that it's a book cover. And then you'll get all sorts of clicks for people who might not read or own a Kindle or want a book at that particular moment. Those people do exist, weirdly. So what I usually do here in this situation is, well, what I want to do is I want to shove this fella over to the side, right? I'd like him to be kind of like over there and give me more room for the book cover. But then I'm getting all this white space. So the way you do that is you zoom in even further, right? So now you see we're creating space for ourselves. Now the book doesn't look so unnatural there, and you don't mind covering him up a little bit because you're zoomed in more into his face. That's not bad. I want to play with it a little bit though. We're definitely getting somewhere. Yeah, I like the framing of those clouds there. I think maybe we've zoomed in a touch too much. Pull it over to the side. A little bit of framing from the clouds. Touch more. You know what? I actually kind of like this. Thought this would be a little bit harder. I don't want to cover them up too much. There. Maybe even like that. Yeah, let's leave it there for now, and then we can add more. We can add more later. The alternative would be to go the other side, of course. I don't like that quite as much. It doesn't feel as natural. Maybe because of the clouds. Adding a natural framing there, which kind of works for me. Do I want to zoom in slightly less? No, maybe even more. Okay. Anyway, I won't fiddle with that forever. Let's crack on with the rest of the design, because I lied. I'm going to fiddle a little bit more. There. There, I think that's better. Now we're covering up less of his ear. Now, what I usually do then is I add some kind of offer like price tag, as CTA, like call to action. So you can put a button saying like download now, read now, buy now. I think people have become a little bit inured to that, and it's not quite as effective. Our eyes glaze over. One thing that still definitely catches our attention is a price tag. Now, There's a big debate over whether you should put price tags in Facebook ad images, just like there is over book covers. I say test everything and follow the data. My strong preference is to put the cover in so people know they're buying a book, and to put the price in so that there's no pause when they get to this Amazon page, right? Pause is death to conversion. So that's one reason why I like using the book covers in the ads, because when people click through, they see the same art. There's no like, oh, did I click on the right link? Am I on the right page? Sometimes people use a very provocative or evocative or eye-catching photo instead of their cover, and that gets them lots of clicks. Then people arrive on the page and I think they're on the wrong web page, or they don't realize they were being sent to Amazon to buy something, or that the ad was for a book. In this case, it's very clear it's for a book. You're not selling the dog, alas. And people click through and they see the same dog, see the same art. But also the price. Now, ignore my funky European prices. That's just because I am a funky European. US price is $3.99. That's what we're going to put in the ad. In this case, so what I often do here is I grab a little square and then I can manipulate that. I can change it into a button. Like if I wanted a shop now button or buy now, read now, I can make a banner. I can make a price tag just from this one shape. So I can make a price tag and put it here. Often I prefer the cover to be on the left and the price tag, but in this case, I think this kind of works. But in this case, I'm not going to do a price tag because I'm going to do a little kind of... See, I think this sometimes looks a bit jaunty, but because this is an all ages cozy mystery with a labradoodle protagonist, I think we're allowed to be a little bit jaunty. And if not, what's the point of living? So in this case, we're going to do this because this kind of looks like, a price tag on in an ad for a children's toy or something like that, So I think that's suitable here. We get a little bit of text, and let's just put in the price, which is $3.99. Now, the reason why myself and any other marketer worth his salt uses red with white text is because of evolutionary biology. We are trained to notice red things, and red means danger. Red stop signs. There's reasons for all that. It was very important in evolutionary terms for the color red to stand out to us. It often meant danger, whether that was like a fire or blood or a redhead on the warpath. Often life-saving to recognize these dangers and vacate the area. Anyway, so here's white on red. Sounds like I'm making a sandwich. Oh my God, I'd love a sandwich. $3.99, so that's the actual price of the book. And if you're running a sale, obviously you would, highlight the sale price, 99 cents, or if it was free, I would definitely be leading with that information because it's the biggest hook possible is that something is free. That just stands out. And I'd probably, let's lock this down so it doesn't move around. That's a handy trick in Canva, by the way. Select any element and lock it and unlock it. Another one, you can group things. So let's say these two things now are going to be together forever. So let's group them. And now I can move the two at the same time, which is handy. If you wanted to move it around or tilt it or anything, you tilt them both at the same time. So that's pretty useful. But let's go back to our price tag for the moment because I want to show you something else, which is... Now, first of all, when you're choosing a font, I recommend choosing something kind of plain. When it comes to a price tag with numbers, font designers tend to spend a lot of time making the letters look nice, less so on things like currency symbols and numbers. They often are an afterthought. I also recommend not choosing Canva Sans, the default font here, because it's just, I see it in probably half the ads I see, it's just Canva Sans, because that's what it defaults to. And it actually looks quite good. So people just, they might try picking something else and it doesn't quite work out and they go back to it. I recommend moving away from it just because it makes your ad look like everybody else's, and you don't want that. You want your own distinctive branding. Don't pick something that's like off genre, like this computer price tag here. Like that would be good for like a retro futuristic book or cyberpunk or some form of sci-fi or maybe some kind of 80s set book. Generally, anything too stylized might be good for like a book title, might be good for a tagline in your ad. I think price tags should be really clear and legible. Like that's a bit too Microsoft Office 1994, so we won't go with that. But you can look around. There's a lot of free fonts in Canva, and you can add your own too. And then if you have Pro, you get like thousands more. All these ones with the little hat are just Canva Pro. Just be careful of these like kind of serif fonts and anything overly stylized. You just want something plain, easy to read, and it's usually just a case of going through and then until you find something that you're happy with. In this case, we will just pick something pretty basic and simple like that. Now, the other problem I wanted to show with fonts is that I often don't like the currency symbol and the size of it. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just me. So I'll show you a little trick I like to do where I copy that, delete the currency symbol from there, and just move it back across a little bit. And then with the second one, delete everything but the currency symbol. And now I can manipulate this. And what I like to do is just make it a little bit smaller. Now, I don't know why. Maybe this is just me. I'd love to hear in the comments, by the way, so do let me know. But this makes me feel like it's a little bit cheaper. Like I'm less concerned about the amount when the price tag is smaller. Is that just me? I genuinely want to know, because I spend the time to do this all the time with my ads. Like I've done it thousands of times, and I've never actually like Googled whether this is just me being strange. Anyway, so we'll group all that stuff together so we can just do a little jaunty tilt like that. And now it looks like a little red sun in the sky. And that's going to pop. I'd probably add one last thing to this ad before I would probably test it, which is a little price banner. Or sorry, review quote. So let's say we have this little red banner here. We want it to go behind the book cover, but in front of the background art. And this is a very handy trick with Canva. Canva doesn't do a great job of explaining all its amazing features, and it took me ages to discover this one. So what I do here is you click position, and then on the left, like it'll show you the various layers, and you can pick whichever layer you want. So whether we have the background art, we have the cover, we have the price, and now because that's grouped together, it's just as one element. And then we have this banner. But we're already on this banner, so that doesn't matter. Anyway, all you need to do here is just go backwards or forwards. So you can move it back. I can move it back again. Now it's behind the cover art, so you can't see it at all. Forward. So that's where we want it. We want it in front of the dog, behind the book cover. And then what I'm going to put there, and I'm going to pick the same font. Let's just ungroup this for a second because I want to grab the same font. By the way, if you're tilting anything, there's a handy little degree sign. You see it there. So you can line up everything perfectly. In this case, we want 0 degrees because we want it to be straight. And what I'm going to put here is maybe like a review quote or something. Now, one thing I noticed here, this has got a lot of positive reviews, 4.4 average, 1,850. I think we're working with far less over here in that sense. So I always try and lean into the strengths of any particular book. So this has got quite a lot of positive ratings. So I'm going to look for something. I'm certainly going to look for a review quote here. And then in my ad text on Facebook itself, when I'm creating the ad, I'll probably lean into that as well. Try and just emphasize the social proof and say, look, this is a popular book. People like it. People like copying popular decisions. And popularity is a very strong guide for us when we don't know what to do. And when we're presented with a buying decision, popularity can be the thing that pushes that buying decision over the edge into a purchase. So I definitely want to look for a review quote here. I'd probably be anal enough to go through all the Amazon ads and find the perfect one, but this is pretty good. Cute canine mystery. Now, here's another aspect of buyer psychology. So if I was just to write cute canine mystery here, and just reduce the font on that to the fits. You can also do it this way, just by pulling out the box. Now I could just say it like that. Cute canine mystery. You're telling people what it is, never a bad thing. In fact, anytime you can get any of these add elements, whether it's the image or the text or the bits inside the image, to reinforce the genre of the book, that's gold. So here, cute canine mystery. We know the dog's not going to die. We know it's for all ages because of the cartoony background. We know it's a mystery because we said straight up it's a mystery. So what we've done here is we've told people exactly what kind of book it is. We've hopefully designed something that's going to pop out of their feed. And the only thing is, I'm telling them, or I'm pretending to be the author here, I'm telling them it's a cute canine mystery. So that's only going to carry so much weight because I'm biased. I'm the person selling the product. But this is actually a review quote, so it should really have quotes around it. And once you have quotes around it, I'm not saying it, someone else is saying it. So it carries more weight. Again, maybe that's just me. I'd love to hear from you in the comments if you think that's total BS or not. But for me, when it's just, I can't help putting some objectivity on the statement in my head when I see quote marks around it. Somebody said it, it must be true. So these are the kind of things that I like to lean on and play with. But I'd be happy to test that ad as is. You know, I might mess around with the colors. Like, for example, red on white isn't the only thing that catches people's eyes. Black on yellow. So once you change one color here, if you want to change all the instances of that color, just go down the bottom left and click change all. Now you don't want white on yellow because that just blends in and doesn't pop. So we change that to black and then again, change all, does it all in one go, pretty handy. And then that actually matches a bit more. I don't know if it pops as much. I would probably, in fact, often do test 2 or 3 different versions and just see which gets the most clicks, you know, which people respond to the best, which one converts into sales. You probably won't see a massive conversion difference just by changing a color like that. So I'd be happy just to look at the clicks. What are people clicking on? Another one that often catches the eye, if you have very light backgrounds like this, by the way, I would punch up that yellow. I can't help doing it. I would punch up that yellow so it's more like a sun. So make it brighter here, like that. And, you know, something like that. And then click change all. Now that looks more like a sun, and I think it pops a bit more because it's more of a neon color and not more like the pastels of the background. So in these cases, this is where a designer might say, oh, that should be more of a pastel yellow, or that should blend in a bit more, or you should have chosen something from the palette, the considerable number of colors already on the page. But this is where I disagree with professional designers, and I think this is where you want these extra elements to actually pop and to catch the eye first. Like, I always show the ads I'm designing, I show them to my partner and say, what catches your eye first here? And if it's not the price tag, especially if the book is free or on sale, I want the price tag to be the very first thing they see. If I had something down here like Amazon #1 bestseller or New York Times bestseller, I might want them to see that first, you know, so I might make that kind of brighter or something. So you got to think about the composition of the ad and what you want readers to see first. Okay, so yeah, I would probably test the red and white. See, the red and white doesn't match, but it's garish. It catches your eye, and you can imagine that popping out on a feed. And you can see the difference between that brighter yellow and the more muted one, which would technically match better. You don't want that. You want to pop. Now, let's look at our other ad with similar challenges, which is similar but different. Okay, so totally different style of cover design here, but equally appropriate for the genre. You have a kind of fairly epic illustration there from Jeff Brown, which is just going to be like catnip for any fantasy reader. Once they see like a high quality hand-drawn illustrated cover, they just assume that the author or the publisher has taken just as much care with the interior of the book. So, you know, if you have the resources or the budget to spring for a custom illustration, that can be a shortcut to getting attention for sure. The challenge here is that we have a totally different shape of cover art. So what do we do in this instance? Let's let's have a play around and see. Okay, so firstly, let's bring this to the front, and we'll worry about the book cover later. First, we've got to cover up all this white space. So let's do that. Let's just make it flush, and if we want to zoom in further afterwards, we can, like we did with that dog earlier. So, dogs and horses. I wonder what's next. An anteater, perhaps. Position backward. Okay, so the obvious thing here to do might be something like this. That seems to be a natural fit. The other option would be to have the mystery of where is the horse rider headed? Where's his army headed? You see some smoke in the distance. There is a certain attraction to that, and sometimes I might go that direction. But the problem is this is a very dark illustration in places, which I'm sure fits the theme of the book. It's about an exiled queen. Presumably she's making war against whoever has usurped the throne, and there's going to be a fight over the crown, as there often is. So a dark illustration is appropriate, but notice the way the cover designer, I don't know if it was the same as the illustrator or a different person, often a different person, they have framed the kind of lighter part of the drawing. So if we move across here, it's the center is where all the light is. That's often the case around where the hero is. So that's where it catches your eye. Illustrator designers thinking of the same things for different reasons. So I think we should mimic what the cover designer has done there. And even though you lose some of the intrigue by showing what the character's looking at, and you don't get the kind of questions about this army behind, is it kind of supernatural in nature? What is going on there? We can have a hint of it by stopping at about there, and then we get all this kind of light and contrast to play with. We still have some issues here, though, and that is just the darkness. And this is why I wanted to start with this one as well, because it contrasts so well with our cute doggo, which is very bright and summery and sunny. Here we have a lot of darkness. So there's a few different ways you can handle that, right? And I want to show you, I'll show you three of them, the three most useful. Okay. The first is to simply, and this is my go-to one that I do all the time, and I just check if this works because it only takes a second. You click on the book cover, so you have it selected. You can tell with the purple outline. Click on Edit Image. Go over to, not to filters, we'll be using those in a moment. FX Effects. Click Shadows. And you can try the few different ones here. I like Glow because it just puts a little shadow all the way around. We're not trying to be realistic here with light placement. We're just trying to make the cover pop a little bit. And you can see there's an intensity here where you can make it pop more and you get more of a shadow, but it looks less realistic. Or you can tone it all the way down if you don't want the effect to be so pronounced. I think in this case, we want the effect to be a bit more pronounced, but we're still struggling here with a lot of darkness. And the reason why that's not good is anytime there's muddiness in an image, if something is blurred or it's confusing, your eye just bounces over it. It's not interesting to your eye. There's nothing for your eye to catch on to. But when you add in a bit of contrast, all of a sudden it gets your attention. And I'll show you how we can bump up the contrast here even more. And this is option number 2. So you select the background art, click on Edit Image, click on Filters, and let's go See All. Now you have a whole bunch of filters here, which just take automatic presets and mess with like the brightness, the contrast, the vibrancy of the colors, all sorts of things. But they make it simple for you. They just call it things like Bali or Nordic or Rustic or Hazel. And then you can just turn the intensity up down. It's like a dumbed down version of doing all these like very specific manipulation to the image. I think something softer here is probably going to work best. See, straight away you can see like it's changed the feeling of the ad and what you can see. You see a lot more definition in the musculature of the horse. Suddenly the rider is a bit more visible. You see this shield, which I didn't even notice before, which looks like an old Celtic or Roman shield. You can see the scales on the armor. So I think it actually helps establish the setting a little bit better, because you realize this isn't just your kind of bog standard, high medieval, typical fantasy backdrop that you see in a lot of epic fantasy. This is a little bit different. It's set in the Roman era, so it's going to appeal to slightly different readers, and it's good to communicate that. I think this is going a bit too far, though. So this is where you can dial back the intensity a little bit, and I like that quite a lot. Let's have another look. Okay, so if you're dealing with totally different genre, like cyberpunk or something sci-fi, or maybe sci-fi romance, or something like that, you can do very different kind of treatments here. You can pull out different colors, like this bringing out the kind of pinker hues here. But I think something like, I like that, the way it bumps the green. Kind of drawn to this one, but if we toned it down, I like the way it brings some light into this corner too. And yeah, you can see together with the shadow effect, we've actually introduced a fair bit of contrast there. The other way, by the way, if you're wondering about the third way, is to do the same with the book cover. I'm always just loath to mess with the book cover unless I absolutely have to, because I want that to look exactly like it does when they click through into Amazon. But that's just maybe me being a bit fussy. So here again, we're going to add some social proof or a tagline, something to square the genre, and we're going to add a hook, like a CTA, a price tag, a button, something to tell readers what we want them to do. We want them to buy the book, we want them to download it, we want them to notice that it's free, or notice that it's a new release, or we want to put the price there so that there's no conversion issue when they go to Amazon. So let's do that. Now, don't worry, I won't be doing all 25 covers at this level of depth. I just wanted to show you some basic principles of these first two first, and then we'll whiz through a bunch of the rest of them, maybe via some kind of montage. I'm very excited about that. I wish my life had a montage, quite frankly. Now, we would just start off with Fire Engine Red. In this case, I'd probably tone it down just a little bit, just to match a bit more with the reds here. So let's just darken it a tiny bit. Not everything has to be on fire, Dave. Okay, so that fits a little better, a bit more crimson in there. Kind of fits with the themes of blood, both the bloodline of the queen and the blood she will surely be spilling on the way back to the throne. Let's pretend this book is free for the moment until I actually check the price. So again, you don't want black on red, even though that thematically that fits better. That pops so much more. So the difference between this and this is that when someone's scrolling through their Facebook feed, they might notice this first, or this, or they might notice nothing. This is definitely the first thing they're going to see. And then they're like, oh, free. And now I'm interested. And then, if they're interested in the genre or the setting or whatever, then they might click through without even reading anything further. But the book isn't actually free. I think it's where I saw it somewhere. $4.99. So let's do that. Now, do you put the price in when it's higher like this? Test it. Once it goes above $2.99, I get kind of unsure whether to put the price in, even though it helps with conversion. Sometimes too high a price, maybe you won't even get the click in the first place. So often what I try and do is emphasize that the book is new. If it's a new release, that's almost as sexy as 99 cent or free. Or if not, I will just double down on social proof. Maybe I won't put a price in at all. Maybe I'll have a review quote. Maybe I'll have something else which squares the genre. And then I'll measure the conversion to see, am I getting a lot of clicks, but people aren't converting? Okay, maybe I need to be more upfront about the price and put it in. But I certainly won't use Canva Sans. I don't like the numbers on that font. We will pick something else. I might look for something kind of Latin-y, but sometimes you can go too far with that. I'm not wild about this font, but I don't want to spend 10 minutes looking for one when I have guests. So let's just do this quickly, and then we'll look to layer in some social proof in a case where you don't have a lot of reviews yet, which, anytime you're launching a book, you won't have a lot of reviews at the start anyway. So it's good to know what to do. And then when you're starting out, obviously reviews accumulate a little bit more slowly to begin with, certainly. Okay, I'd probably fuss over that a bit, but yeah, I like smaller currency symbols. I don't know what it is. They make me feel like I'm not spending as much money. So yeah, if you ever want to sell me anything, you know what to do now. I think I prefer that. Okay. And then I would probably put in, I like the idea of doing a banner here because it kind of fits thematically. And in fact, this is one way that if you can't solve your contrast issue just by playing with filters or putting a drop shadow, this is another good way of doing it. So we want to move this back behind the cover, not all the way back. Okay. Let's try that again. Backward. Okay, so you can see there, we solved the problem quite neatly here. We've covered up probably, one of the least interesting parts of the drawing, so I'm happy to sacrifice that. And now we can put something in here. Now you can put price here. Now there's nothing stopping you doing that and putting something else up the top. Like maybe you want your review quote there. But for the moment, let's dig out a review quote. Now I'm always looking for something that mentions the genre of the book. Now you can't. Oh, here we go. You can't make something up. You really shouldn't. You will get caught out, and you will get pilloried on the internet. Nobody wants that for you. It's just never a good starting off point to be lying to readers in any capacity. Usually doesn't end well. So search through your reviews, your genuine reviews, and find something that's going to square the genre, that makes the book sound good, but especially that conveys the genre. This is why I like this. So I would. Why is it so small? I need to cut this down, basically. Rich and rousing, memorable historical fantasy. Let's say rich historical fantasy. I think that's something that could appeal to readers of the genre. I don't like when the quote goes onto 2 lines because then you're dealing with spacing, which is always tricky. But this is how you do it here. The spacing button just beside the effects. And then you can... It's always better when it looks a bit closer, I think. But I would prefer kind of putting it all in one line, really, if I can. Especially if I want to put something underneath. Now, you might want to put Publishers Weekly in underneath there. I personally wouldn't bother. It's basically just an industry... I don't want to say industry rag. It's an industry publication. It might mean a lot to a bookseller or an editor or an author or a librarian. Not so much to a reader. I would still put the quotes around it, though. I think that's important. So, rich historical fantasy. Let's just squeeze it in a bit more. Okay, there we go. And now we can resize this in a second once I move it into the right place. And just get it as big as possible while fitting in the space that we have. And, you can tone this down a bit. You can even do that. You can even do that style of thing. And I like the way the shadow appears on the red there. It just gives it an extra bit of depth. Or you can go for the full bar. And you can also swap these around. Like if this was free or something really enticing to readers, like a discount, I'd be tempted to do something like that. I often try and test a few different things and just see what the readers respond to, and then just listen to them. And sometimes what I think they're going to respond to isn't quite right. And often I just play around with things till it looks really good. And I think that looks pretty good. I think, that's an ad I would certainly be happy testing and to see how it goes. And then if it didn't work out, I know where I would go from there. But I think that could do quite well. I think that's going to appeal to readers of the genre. And then if we wanted to resize this one to, let's say, a letterbox Facebook ad, let's just show you what that looks like. It doesn't always move the elements into the right place, but sometimes it does surprisingly well, and you barely have to touch it. Other times, especially if, like I did, I locked down the position of the book cover, so that's going to mess with it a bit. Anyway, we generally have to fiddle with these things afterwards. So you get more of the epic feel because you're zoomed back, right? But maybe less of the drama. So let's try and correct a bit of that with increasing the book cover. Now, I mightn't want to do such a big solid red banner if it's going to stretch the whole way across the ad. And in this case, I would put the quote down here, definitely, because now I've got room to really make it bigger. So no one is going to miss the fact that it's a historical fantasy here. And rich is a power word, so good to pick a quote with something like that in it. And then I would probably, for the free part, I would probably ditch this and I would go back to one of these price taggy things. Maybe not the jaunty one. This is a different kind of book, more serious. You could use something, you could just use a simple circle, that often works. And you can put it anywhere you like, anywhere that feels good. I generally want to move away from where the other element is, but sometimes you don't have much of a choice. Although, there's always a little kind of quieter spot, and you might want to put an angle on it or not. I think in this case, it kind of makes it look like a sticker that a bookseller put on the book, So I think it can catch the eye. Or sometimes it can just look strange and you just want to put it straight again, so 0 degrees. And there, sometimes, doing it like that can be cool. And yeah, I'm happy with that. I would run that as a test. I might play around with this a little bit more. I'd almost certainly play around with the hue of that red. I might make it brighter. I might still go back to my trusty fire engine red, just because it pops so much more. And I think, I would click on that. If that comes up in my Facebook feed, I'm clicking on that. Okay, let's do a quick one now. This is quite interesting. This is a sequel to The War of the Worlds, which is in the public domain now. And this is the book here on Amazon. So it's science fiction, perhaps with a retro-futuristic vibe. I don't know, but definitely science fiction. And I think, it's such an interesting stylized cover. It's going to resonate with readers of the genre straight away. I don't think we need to do much to turn this into a very good looking ad. Obviously, first we've got to fill the white space. And then, there's a rather obvious kind of darker spot where you could put in the book cover. And I already think that looks really good. There's space up there where we could put in a button like we did before, which would be pretty simple to do. Orange is a great color to work with. I find it quite easy because red looks great. You could do like a square up there with free or $2.99. I believe the book is $2.99. You could do $2.99 up there, free. Let's just do that quickly. $2.99. White text. Let's try that again. $2.99. Change the font. Let's use something quite plain. I would probably pick something maybe a little more stylized to match this. But rather than waste the time doing that now, I just want to show you a couple of options in terms of how to handle the design. So that's a really simple way to do it. You could put a little shadow in there. Let's just do that quickly. Now you see the book shrunk down a little bit. So let's stretch that open again. Yeah, and that fits quite well there. Sometimes the cover goes a little bit fuzzy after you've applied the filter, but you can just kind of click it again and it'll catch up with itself. So that's one option, right? But here's something kind of interesting you can do when the background isn't always playing ball, or just to see if you can kind of make it a bit cooler, right? Because I already think this is very good. You can put another little red banner down the bottom here, a little review quote there, or emphasize the fact that it's a sequel to The War of the Worlds, which is probably the biggest hook here for genre fans. But I'm just spying the possibility to do something even more interesting here, perhaps. So if you select the background image and just click flip, and do flip horizontal, I think this could end up looking quite cool. So now you can only do this on something that doesn't have text on it, because if we did it with the book cover, you'll see what's going to happen. The text gets mirrored, so that's not usable. Although you can perhaps be creative and think of a way that you could potentially use that mirror effect. The reason why I wanted to look at this version is because I think that's quite cool, because now it gives the impression of two of those giant Martian robot interloper things searching in the city rather than just one. I don't know, I like that. Maybe more than that. That's kind of cool because it's, echoing the same design. Well, it's literally the same design. But there's something kind of cool about this also. I'd be tempted to try that. So yeah, you can mirror the background sometimes if you can't get things to position exactly where you like. I'm not going to spend much more time on this. I think this is in pretty good shape. I'd probably, if I was, putting money behind this as an ad, I would probably fiddle around with this price tag, see if I want to do something else with it. I would also probably do something like maybe like this. Position backward, just to have that pop out a little bit, or even do it as a banner like that, maybe going here, that could be cool. Have a little quote there, a sequel to The War of the Worlds. That would be very tempting to do something like that. But obviously, if I'm doing that and having more text, I would spend more time now finding the exact right font to look good with this. Probably something plainer like the cover designer has done for the tagline there itself. But yeah, something like that could be very cool. I like that a lot, actually. All right, let's keep this pace up. Let's just grab the next one here. In the Silence by M.R. Mackenzie. This looks like a mystery of some kind or a thriller. Let's check it out on Amazon and see. Shortlisted for the Bloody Scotland debut prize. So it's probably pretty good. Gritty, character-driven crime fiction. Okay, cool. That's enough for me. I know this genre very well. I worked in it quite a lot. It's first of a series of 6. Okay. So if I had a 6-book series, I'd probably be price aggressive with the first book when advertising it on Facebook. I'd be very tempted to do a free or 99-cent promotion. I'd probably go even more aggressive than that. I'd probably go free book 1, 99-cent book 2, 1.99 book 3. If I was launching book 4, 5, 6, certainly. I don't do the same thing every time. I like to mix it up, keep things fresh, use different promo sites, use different ad graphics, use different tactics, so that you're always not going back to the same well of readers with the same offer. Anyway, so quite a straightforward one here. This would be the typical design challenge that an author might face using this method here that I've cobbled together out of belly button lint and bits of string. You have the cover art. You have the cover. Pretty well designed cover for this niche. British regional gritty crime. Yeah, it's nailed on for the genre, absolutely. There's a few different colors we can work with here, though. I'm already looking at this red, and you can probably guess what I'm going to do with that. Um, yeah, okay. So the problem here is that we have a lot of dark space up here, which will be cool to work with. But once we stretch this out, we're going to lose a lot of it, right? This is a challenge I often have, especially with the square ads. And again, as with the cover with the dog on it, we have a little bit of a problem in that if we want to put our cover in a decent size, we're kind of shoving it in, and then you have all this dead space over here. And this is something I see a lot from amateur efforts, even more amateur than me. I'm not a professional, where they do something like this. They don't know how to kind of balance the cover. So you get a lot going on one side, and then nothing here, and then they try and fill up in the space. I do this a bit myself, especially when I'm not sure what to do. They start filling in the space with other things, and they might have. I actually see this from traditional publishers a lot. Sometimes their ads are very good. They've definitely gotten a lot better in the last few years. Sometimes they're not as good. When they're not as good, you often see something like this. They don't know what to do with the background, so they just start putting stuff in here. So they might put in that thing where it was nominated for that bloody Scotland prize, because that would be an award that would be quite well known by fans of UK crime fiction. So that would be something to shout about here. They might put a tagline in up top. So I often see ads like this. So this is not a design I'm suggesting. This is what I typically see, just so we can talk about a couple of the mistakes that I often see that you can maybe work around in your own designs. So they would do something like this. Not so bad. At least they're picking text, which your next thriller. Do I say something like that? Which is pretty weak ad copy, because you're not telling the reader what to do. It's much better if you tell them what to do. Like, download this. That's why things like click here, buy now, shop now became so ubiquitous, because they were so effective. People are a bit immune to them now, so I don't necessarily recommend being that on the nose. But this, where you're just stating something, it's not as powerful as it could be. I would much prefer going into the reviews, finding a quote, preferably something that mentions the genre, and pulling that out up on top. But anyway, that's not the approach we're going to take. So let's reverse before we go too far down that road. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and balance this a little bit better, just like we did with the dog cover, and just zoom it out a little bit. So now already you can see this feels a little bit more natural, a little bit more balanced. It doesn't just feel as off to our brain, although something about my brain wants to go this direction instead, maybe. And you can play around with that till it looks right, because we're not losing much by zooming in here. You know, you want to keep some of this darkness at top, foliage at the bottom. You definitely want to keep some of that. So I wouldn't zoom in too far and get it all the way over there. This looks kind of fine to me, you know, as a starting point. And now we still have quite a lot of space to work with in terms of putting in a price banner or something like that. Now the obvious move might be to go for red, but I'm going to show you something else too. So that's picking up the red from there. It's not always 100% accurate, and sometimes you might just, for your own purposes, want to make it a little bit brighter anyway. So yeah, we don't want to cover that steeple, right? Something like this could work. I feel like I want to put that up a bit more. We want this cover to pop out a bit, so we'll drop a little shadow behind it. In this case, I wouldn't use filters to mess with that design. I don't think it would look as good, so I'm not even going to check it out. Besides, I think there's enough natural contrast here in the color palette where we don't have to mess with it too much. to get the effects that we want. And the effect that we want here is for the cover to stand out a little bit without crowding that steeple too much. Because I like the framing, just like in a photograph. The framing of the bushes here, it gives a bit of depth to the image, makes it a bit more kind of 3D. Yeah, maybe something like this. And then we got room here to put in a price or review quote or a mention of that award it was nominated for. Because I suspect there would be quite a bit of name recognition for that in the UK market, at least. Because crime's a much bigger genre in relative terms in the UK than it is in the USA. So if you look at the top 20 on Amazon US on a given day, half of them could be romances or more. And you might only see a couple of thrillers unless there was like, a big release from one of the huge names. UK is the opposite. On any given day, the top 10 could be 10 thrillers, crime novels, mystery, suspenses. Usually it's like 6, 7, 8 of them, unless there's some big Kindle daily deal or something going on. Yeah. So if you have a crime novel, don't neglect the UK market. So we could put on a price here. I didn't check how much it was. Let's have a look. $1.99. So I'm guessing that's because it's the book one in a series. Common tactic, if you're unaware, is if you have a series to make the first book free, cheap, 99 cent, $1.99, $2.99 if the other ones are higher priced would be common enough too. You have a range of approaches you can play with there. And the good thing about having a permanently cheap book is that you can constantly run advertising and constantly have an offer to present to readers. Obviously, it's much easier to sell a $1.99 book than it is to sell one for $4.99 or $9.99, especially in venues like BookBub, where it's really hard to advertise a book that isn't some kind of deal. Not impossible, but very hard. And when you're learning, not the kind of challenge I would recommend. Now, I don't particularly like this design. It's bothering me for some reason. Often I press ahead anyway, and then sometimes the solution manifests itself somewhere along the way. Maybe it's this font I don't like, or maybe I've just seen it on 2 or 3 designs I've done today already, and the ubiquity is already starting to bother me. I think this looks okay, though. Is it like just basic ad? I'm probably going to want to put a quote in there instead, and then take... Hold on, let me lock this for a second so I can pick up the other part. Yeah, let me group these guys. Okay, so I'll probably want to put a quote there and then put the price over here, maybe by just using a circle. That's usually one of the simplest things to do. Yeah, and we'll pick the same red. By the way, if you ever want to copy an exact shade, just click on it here. Click on the little plus sign as if you're going to move that circle around and just copy the hex code here. And then, often it gives you the choice of the other colors in the document, but it's defaulting to that darker one first. And I don't want that. So I can just copy it in here. And then I get it to exactly match. It doesn't look very good if you've got like 2 different shades of red on the elements that you're adding. And I would recommend avoiding that. Something kind of stylized like that could be kind of cool. Yeah, I think that looks okay. And then obviously I would, ungroup this for a second. Copy and paste just so I have the font easily. And if I had a quote saying something like this, I would say, something about, how did the author describe it? Gritty crime thriller, gritty crime novel. If you had a quote saying something like that, or, a phrase that readers of the niche would often use, like unputdownable, or you will know yourself working in the genre what are the push button phrases that You know, I think for thrillers and police procedurals, people usually like something that's, well plotted and all sorts of twists and turns and a bit of mystery to keep you guessing and all that kind of stuff. So you see these phrases pop up in reviews. They can be gold when put in somewhere like this. But even, without, oops, didn't mean to do that. Even without that, I'm not mad about the lack of contrast up here. That's why I want to put in that bar. But, I think that's a pretty enough ad as it is. And you could even maybe put it down a bit lower. Or you could move this guy over here if you just wanted to fill that space, and it's kind of like a blood moon or something. You have options. You have options there. Right. We might come back to this cover because there's something bothering me about the top of it in the composition. I think I kind of preferred when we had that bar there. Yeah, we might come back to this one. Can we do something like this? Is that too much? Maybe. We'll come back to it. Let's pick another one out of the pile. Okay, let's mix it up a little bit here and do a romance. I'm already nervous. Okay. My Book Boyfriend. Okay, good title. I love the font on the cover. That's really, really cool. Yeah, nice design. I want to see the series branding. Yeah, that's good. I like that. Those covers are very nice. Okay, so I don't know much about the genre. I'll say that straight up because I'm probably going to say some things that are either stupid or wrong, if not both. Yeah, we can work with this. Okay, let's go back. $3.99. Romantic comedy. It says satire fiction as well, but I'm getting a strong romantic comedy vibe here. And looking at the also boughts, and yeah, I think we'll ignore the satire part. And oh, look, she refers to it directly as a rom-com. Okay, and each can be read as a pure standalone with a guaranteed happy ever after. Closed door, romantic comedy standalones. Okay. So, not steamy, closed door, romantic comedy. Very nice cover. Okay, let's see what we can do. As per usual, we want to get as much of this cover art into our frame as possible. We must cover up the white space, which means losing some of it, sadly, but so be it. We definitely want to focus on this couple. And once again, that presents a little bit of a problem for us because we've got a cover to fit in here somewhere. Now, how do we do that without covering up this really cute drawing? So we could be very literal and make it the is actually a book boyfriend. Now he's half book, half man. Finally, one you can read easily. Yeah, we could do something like that, but again, I'd be tempted to zoom in at least a little bit, right? Can we do that? Is that going to work? Oh, it's going to be so tight. Right. That's what she said. Okay, enough of that. Yeah, I think that something like that could be cool. I'd probably play around with this one a lot just because the cover art is so nice that I don't want to disrespect it, if you like, by making a crappy ad or not capturing as much of its design as possible. Oh, it's tricky. I think something like that, though. And now if we pop an effect, my go-to one is always the glow. I don't use it all the time, but I use it a lot. Like you can see here, it just provides a nice little subtle shadow all the way around. Yeah, and sometimes when it's kind of loading in, it just makes itself a little bit smaller. So you might want to reposition this. Yeah, I think that could work. I love the expression on her face. That's really well drawn. And yeah, so and for the banners here, we don't have a lot of room. So we got to be very careful about where we place them. I would even be tempted to go minimal here because there's a lot going on the screen. And would it be 2 on the nose? So use like a love heart button. Is that like something stupid a man would say because he doesn't read romance? Who cares? Let's go for it. Apologies to anyone. I don't know if I could pick out that pink. That would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? So let's just export this and pick out the pink. So I have this blog post on my site: 12 free design tools for authors, and they're all free, as the title suggests. And I'll put a link to it in the description of this video. It talks about Canva Premium or Canva Pro and free Canva, and an alternative called Bookbrush, so you can check that out. But the thing I want to focus on here is these free graphic design tools. This one is super cool. We're going to use that in a minute. It's called Coolers. It's really good for matching colors. If you're like me and you just can't match colors naturally, this will show you how to do it. HTML color codes. That's the one we're going to use now. That's where you can put in any image and hold on a second. Let's export what we were doing there. Just so I can pick out the exact shade of pink on the cover. So I think this could be a case where it would be really, really good to match. Or at least want to see what it looks like. So we upload that into here. And we want to zoom in on this kind of pink here. Right. So there we take the hex code. Boom. And we put that into Canva right here. Plus sign, hex code, just paste it in. And you see it's matched it perfectly. And I love this tool. It's so handy. I'm not going to do love heart on me. That's just a bit too much. Let's just do a circle. But you can do love heart if you want. I'm just scared of love. That's my problem. Okay, so I think this book was $2.99, was it? $3.99. Okay. Text. $3.99. Boom. Now, the problem here is I think black on pink in this context here looks a little bit cheap. So what you could do is experiment with a few different colors just to try and get that contrast, but so that it looks a little bit better. No. Let's try. See, that's not right. I think that looks kind of okay, you know. The problem is it's not quite popping. The price tag especially. Maybe you don't want it to. Like maybe you want to be drawn to this woman's face and her lipstick. That's just giving me an idea, actually. Why don't we take the color from her lipstick? Here we go. Wow. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Now let's drop that in instead. Okay. And it still feels like it matches. And then the white pops a bit more. Let's pick a nicer font. What about this Poppins one here? Now, why is that color reverted to something silly? Let's go that back to white. White. Much better. Okay, and I am going to do my trick with the currency sign because I object to regular size currency signs. They do not appeal to me. They make me feel like I'm spending too much money. Whereas these small little cute ones make me feel like I'm being financially responsible. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Okay, so let's get this out of the way for a second. Let's lock this down. Boom. Let's grab. Oh, not that. Oh crap! Where was it? There. Okay. So did we lock that down? Lock it. Lock this down. We're not moving that again. Grab these two guys, group them together, and let's see if we can do something like this. Yeah. Maybe it should have been a love heart. Turn it a little bit. Now, I think that's quite cool. I wouldn't do much more to it. I wouldn't, in this case, I wouldn't be keen to put in too many banners or quotes or whatever. Yeah, I like this. I really like this drawing. I love the expression on her face. I think it's great. And when you're doing like a promotion later on, like that's going to look fab. Let's get rid of this guy. What am I doing? Yeah, I think that's going to look great. I really like that anyway. Hopefully fans of the genre like it too. I just like that design. I think it's cool. And this font, I desperately want to find out what that is. And I would totally use it there if I knew what font it was. I could probably find out, but it would take ages and be super boring for anyone watching. Okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to move on. Do let me know in the comments what you think of all these designs. I am curious. Okay, let's go sci-fi. I think this is space opera. Let's see. Galactic Gladiator. Yeah. So we got sci-fi. It's hard to tell where the genre lines are between something like space adventure, military sci-fi, and space opera. It all seems to be kind of gone into one genre. Certainly in America, anyway, the kind of space opera you regularly see dominating the charts is more military sci-fi. But there's lots of different niches in sci-fi that all do very well. And certainly not the case that you have to write military sci-fi to make any money. There's lots more stuff which brings in more fantastical elements, and this looks like it might be one of those. Just looking at the blurb here and some of the words popping out in reviews. Okay, so I'm just going to assume space adventure. Doesn't look like it's going to be hard sci-fi. Put it that way. I think there's going to be fantastical elements here. Okay, let's just go. And we have the cover here. And background art here. So first of all, we got to kill the white space. And will that present problems to us? Because look, there goes the head of our hero. And yeah, we got to find a way to... I always feel like there's always a compromise with every design where you're going to have to lose something. So you can never squeeze everything you want in, but you also gain something too. So, okay, it might be cool when you can see, that he's standing on some kind of futuristic structure there. But when you zoom in, you're also gaining more drama, right? The reader is getting sucked into the image, and one would hope the story. But framing of it is very important. Like, what are you going to zoom in on? What are you going to cut out? What are you going to cover with your book? See, it's pretty easy when you just use an image. You don't have to worry so much about what you're covering up. It's a little bit harder to use a book cover, but I think it's definitely worth it. I think it works out better. Now, we don't want the cover that small. Yeah, I thought this was going to be super easy. This is actually a little bit tricky. So again, this would be the standard kind of way I'd see people do it. They would just zoom in to fill the white space. I think everyone can figure out that part. But then they don't know where to put the book cover. Common error. And I'd say in half the ads I see, it's just something like this. Maybe they'll put a little effect around the book cover like I do. That's hardly the most advanced bit of graphic design there. I think a lot of people know how to do that. And they'll just do something like that because they don't want to cover the hero. They don't want to cover his cool flaming mace or whatever that is, some kind of cudgel. Or sometimes they do this and now they're awkwardly covering it. Or sometimes even worse, like this. It's awkward. It's awkward. And I get it. It's not an easy thing to solve. Unless you know how. And you only know how when you kind of stumble across it yourself blindly, which is what happened to me. Oh, I guess alternatively, you could go to college and learn this stuff properly or get a job or something like that. But who has the time? All right. Already we're looking better here. Okay. I feel good about this now. It just feels a bit more balanced. Also, I'm more aware of this looming spaceship, which I don't know if it's on his side or not, but it certainly adds an element of intrigue to the image. I don't want to pull this up too much because then we're going to take away from that effect. You see, it just gradually gets less interesting, exciting. And now when revealing it, it's looking more interesting. Okay, so could we get away with that? I'd probably do it like that. I'd probably do it like that and just squeeze it in the corner. I always like leaving a little bit of an edge there. I think that helps with makes it look less slapped together. It looks like it naturally pops out more, if that makes any sense. It just seems a bit more organic and it just feels right. You could even zoom in more. If you wanted to make the book cover bigger, you're going to have to zoom in on this guy more, basically. And then you're losing a little bit of the axe. That's the trade-off that I spoke about. And if you do that, then you're kind of killing the ship. And I don't know, I think that looks okay. I don't think it looks bad. I think this looks a little bit better. That's just my taste. You can take this concept and these ideas and play around with them yourself as much as you like. I brought this up because I like bringing that little bit of light into the corner. I just think that looks better. So yeah, quite a bit smaller on the book cover than I've done in previous ads. But I think that looks kind of cool as it is, even without anything else. I think we've punched up the drama there by zooming in, which, although we've lost some cool elements from the background art, I think we've gained more by allowing you to zoom in on the guy's face and is this an injury or is this something to do with the magic force that he's controlling this object with? I don't know, but it starts. For the part of my brain which enjoys reading science fiction and fantasy stuff, it's already firing at those kind of questions. And, that's what you want to do with your ad. You want to put in as many genre hooks in there as possible, and you're going to be doing that with the title and with the fonts and with the images and with your ad text as well, hopefully. And hopefully all of that then is then reinforced when they get to the Amazon page and, they see the tagline, they see the reviews, and your whole presentation, your whole packaging should have as many genre hooks in it as possible. So anyway, I like what we've done so far. We're not finished though. And you might think, where can you possibly squeeze in? Like, honestly, I'm actually wondering where I could put in a price tag. Okay, well, I can see one place. Yeah. So I would do maybe a banner across here. You're occluding the least interesting part, least busy part. And I think there's room for something here. And you see Canva has automatically picked out one of the document colors, which is great when you want to match. But in this case, we don't want to match too much. We want to stand out. And here's where I'd go almost neon yellow. Yellow and blue is a great combination, contrast, match, whatever the actual word is for people who actually know the theory behind this stuff. I just know what looks good and what works. And I think in this case, to offset all the blue there, I think a kind of a brighter yellow would work pretty well. But if you ever want to actually match colors properly, let me show you something you can do. So I'm going to just export this image so we can work with it. And again, we'll go into our HTML color picker. that we used before. I will put a link to that in the comments. Let me just upload the correct file here. Okay, so if I wanted something to match perfectly with this shade of blue, I would take the hex code here. And then I go to Coolers, which is also another free site. I think they have paid plans. I've always just used the free site. And click Start the Generator. This is some sci-fi stuff we're doing here. Okay, so that's the color from the background of the image. And if I was really anal, I'd go in and pick like 2 or 3 more of the colors, the color palette chosen by the artist. And now I lock that down. And if I press my space bar, boom, it's like playing slots. It'll just keep coming up with different shades, different colors that match or contrast well with your base color. And if you want to even lock down 2 of them now, let's say you like that yellow, what else can you come up with? Okay, you like that periwinkle, what matches all 3 of those now? And it will cycle through them. It's pretty cool. I will put a link to this blog post in the description, which is my blog post on 12 free graphic design tools for authors. And that has links to Coolers, and it has links to the HTML color picker, and has links to Canva if you don't know that, and a bunch of other cool free tools like that, like for removing backgrounds from images and a few things like that. You can check it out yourself in your own time. Now, let's take this more matchy yellow. Let's see if the AI knows more than me. I suspect the answer is yes, but let's see. It doesn't always pan out. Yeah, I like it. It's not as garish. It doesn't pop as much. I like it. I'd probably use that though. But if you want to get more matchy, that's the process. That's the way you do it. I don't. I want money, so I'm going to do that. Okay. Now, let's put in... What are we doing here? What's the price? $2.99. Okay, and it's the first in a series. I always check if it's like the first in a series, just so my mind can start spinning about kind of the marketing plan that I might come up with. So if I was releasing book 4, I see there's 3 in the series. If I was releasing book 4, I would be like free book 1, 99-cent book 2, $1.99 book 3, and then full price book 4. I would run ads to the book 1 at free. I would do promo sites on it. I would then do ads to the series page as well. I'd probably do a free Booksy series promo as well, and just try and get everything moving at once and everything feeding into each other. And that's one way that you can use discounts on older books to generate sales for full price books, because that's what I really want to do. I really want to sell full price books. And the best way to do that is build your audience with discounts, leverage those into full price sales over time as they work their way through the rest of the series. Okay, so definitely not using this font. I like the $sign though in that font, so I might keep it because it's nice and plain and clean and simple, like myself. I like those numbers. Enter. Okay. Now, it's almost like I can feel the price shrinking as I shrink that $sign. Yeah, I'm not wild about this banner and this price tag. I'd probably play around with that a good bit. And even when, it looks like yellow might naturally work best, I always just check the red because it does tend to pop. And I'll often design both, test both, and see what works. And even if I know the red is going to work, I'll still do up a yellow and black version because it only takes a second to change all the colors, especially if you click the right buttons. Let's try that one more time. Okay, so there we go. I actually have a conference call now. I've just realized in 60 seconds. So I'm going to leave this one here. We might come back to it though, because I don't feel like it's finished, but we've definitely got the basis for something good there. Let's, what do we do here? All right, let's go. This looks historical fiction, I think. Let's click the link and make sure it's not historical fantasy, just in case. Okay, this sounds like real historical fiction as opposed to fantastical. Um, yeah, you can see there medieval historical fiction, historical Norse and Icelandic fiction. Okay, so we got a Viking novel, The Norse Queen. I'm guessing it's about this lady here. Um, to protect her people, she must wed her father's killer. That's quite a good setup. And yeah, it's the first in a 6-book series, which gives you lots and lots of marketing options. And you'll notice the prices here are kind of interesting. $7.99 on book 6, $6.99 on book 4, $5.99 on book 3. So this kind of stepped up pricing. Well, firstly, historical fiction is often a higher price genre, and you should price according to your genre rather than what your friends are doing and what self publishers are doing rather than what traditional publishers are doing. Because we want to sell ebooks, they want to protect the print market because they control it. That's enough politics for one day. Right, let's make some book ads. Now, don't worry, by the way, if your book wasn't selected this time around. I think I didn't count them. It was over 200 submissions. So that's a lot. And obviously, I don't know how many we'll get through in one workshop. Not 200. Not even the 20 or 25 I picked out at the start. But if we got through 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that, I think that's a good day's work. Okay, so again, we're doing our usual trick here where we've taken the cover art, and thank you to the author for providing just the art rather than the framing. That would have been tricky. But now we give it a bit more freedom. And this hopefully is handy for you so you know when you're talking to your designer what you need from him or her. So this works out quite neatly. We don't have to do any weird zooming in. So see, if we zoomed in, we would lose some of that sword, you know. It is nice to see a bigger face. I like very big faces because I'm Irish. Yeah. I spent my whole life not realizing that Irish people have very big heads until I started traveling the world. And then I realized our nation were famous for our large heads. It's probably to contain all the anecdotes that we have from going to the pub every day. Okay. I could fiddle with this forever, but this looks pretty good. I kind of like the way the sun is coming behind the cover there and gives it a nice bit of contrast. And obviously that breaks up her golden hair. And then you see the fetching chainmail sweatband, which is very handy for when you want to play tennis during a Viking pillage. But it's cool. Yeah, I like the picture. I like the cover. I think this is very evocative. I am curious if we could flip it, what it might look like. Not. Oh, you can tell it's getting late now. Not like that, and not the cover. So let's do that. Oh, that's kind of cool. She's looking at the book. I don't know. I think it looks kind of cool. Yeah. So that's interesting because you're wondering what she's looking at. You know, is she just looking away in disgust, or scheming, perhaps planning to vanquish her father's killer? So you have that mystery that she's looking off the page, and what is she looking at? What is she thinking about? You know, these kind of questions that you plant into the mind of a reader with your words in your novel. You can also do it with your ad images and create that kind of mystery and intrigue, that little hook to pull readers in. But I also like, oh God, it's all going wrong. I also like this quite a lot. That's a tough choice. That's a tough choice. I don't know. I might go with this version. Oh, please do tell me in the comments what you would prefer was used there. Now, The one disadvantage I see from this version, we've got to get the sword in there, and that sun, especially the way it's shining through her hair and really making it very golden. Maybe like this. I think that's quite cool. But hold on, let's just keep that one, make a copy. Sometimes I get torn like this, and I'm not quite sure. Oh, I like that as well. Urgh. And what I do in these circumstances is I let the readers decide. So, you can do this in a social way on Facebook. You can post up like 2 ad images and go to your readers, which one do you like more? And just get, your votes in the shape of likes or whatever. Or you can let the market decide, which I prefer doing because it's a truer response, I guess, what people are willing to spend money on. And it's not so much you want to know what your fans prefer because they're bringing something to the table there. They'd be like, oh, that's when Rianne is looking back to Taylor Font, and they have the whole story playing out in their head. Or someone coming at it cold, which is what the people you'll be advertising to are new to you readers, not necessarily your existing fans, especially a book one. Sometimes it's better just to get the response from the market. And you make up both ads, use them both in testing, and see which works. Like, if I was to guess, I would say maybe this would work better, but I wouldn't be surprised if I looked at the data and this is actually, more clicks and cheaper clicks and more sales. I wouldn't be surprised. And then, of course, I would justify it with some ipso facto argumentation. Okay, so I like both, but let's just go with one of my guts and make this one up, because I think there's I'd feel like I'm blocking out the sun by putting a price tag there. Of course, I could put a banner there. I'm just kind of making excuses to get what I want, like most people do. Okay, let's put in a big love heart. I'm joking. Let's put in. Let's go with our trusty red to begin with. And, I might make that slightly more orangey so that it's still vibrant and pops, but it's a little more attuned to her hair. Is that too much? Is that cheesy? Do feel free to voice your opinion. I don't pretend to be any kind of professional designer at all. I more just muddle along, as you might have noticed, until things click, and then I don't really understand why or how, but I just roll with it. But hey, it works. And I hope, the process of seeing me kind of grasp around and struggle a little bit and be unsure gives you a little bit of confidence that, you don't have to be a professional designer. I'm certainly not. You don't have to have lots of skills or fancy software, or even any artistic ability at all. I certainly don't. But I do have a book cover and the cover art, and I have Canva, and that's all I need to make ads. And maybe they're not the best ads in the world. I don't think any designers will be quitting the industry after seeing my sophomore efforts. But I think they look reasonably well. So this one's actually $1.99. So yeah, that's what I was saying about the pricing on the series. I think book 6 is $7.99, book 5 $5.99, and then I think book 2 or 3 is $3.99, something like that. There's a step up in pricing because when readers are hooked, they're not going to be as price sensitive, and especially if you've been selling the first book, which looks like a proper full length book. It's not like a novella, 320 pages, so it's a normal regular sized novel, and $1.99 is pretty damn cheap. So the reader got it for cheap. They were taking the risk, so you pay them to cover the risk. But now they're on book 3, 4, 5. Don't be afraid to put up the price. It's not gouging. I still think $5.99 or even $7.99 is not a crazy price to ask for a book 6 in a series that you love. I'm certainly happy to pay it as a reader. Obviously, I prefer paying $1.99. Generally, I price my own stuff at $4.99, but you're the captain of your ship. Price it how you like. And Yeah, so when you have a permanently cheap book, you don't have to wait until you're running a sale or you're doing a launch or whatever. You can kind of do testing all the time if you want to. You can run sales all the time if you want to. Obviously, there's a limited pool of readers in the world, um, but I think the audiences are generally big enough on Facebook that you can do quite a lot of advertising before you start to run out of readers. Now, if your ads are bad, you run out of readers faster because you're just chewing through readers all the time. It's the same if you don't care who signs up to your mailing list. You're just chewing through readers all the time. Um, if you're a bit more selective, a bit more targeted, uh, then I find you can get better results, and then you don't chew through the audiences as fast. So you don't run out of people to advertise to, and then you start running ads to. I don't know. If I was advertising this book, first thing I would always look for is the genre targetable interest on Facebook. Like, can I actually advertise to Viking fiction or something like that? I would look for big authors in the genre. I don't know, is Bernard Cornwell one? I know he's also got a Viking series. I would try targeting those guys. And if your comp authors, your authors in your genre that you're writing a similar style to, or at least you're targeting the same readers. If you can't target any of those, if you can't target your genre directly, or if it's just too big, like if there isn't a good Viking fiction genre, or if Facebook removed that last year when they removed lots of niche interests and they just left historical fiction behind, which might be a little bit too broad for your book if it's a more niche interest. Then you can try something like pairing a TV show with a Kindle interest. So you could try the Vikings TV show, but then narrowed by Kindle Store and Kindle, so that you're getting all the fans of the show, but ones that buy ebooks in the Kindle Store. So there's a pretty good chance they're a reader, and there's a pretty good chance they like Viking fiction. Worth testing anyway. So they're the three types of interests that I try and target, aside from my own custom audiences and things like that. But anyway, this the kind of ad. I'm not mad about this orange. I am going to go back to my red. I think it just looks a little cheap or something. I don't know why, but I don't like it, and I go by gut when doing this more than anything else. I think that looks pretty decent. I'm not even sure if I'd add much more to that, just because the picture is so evocative and makes you intrigued about the character. That price and cover and that main character are enough of a draw. Now, I wouldn't stop there. I would look for something like this. It's a bit long to put into an ad. I'd probably use it in the ad text on Facebook. I would look for something else. Okay, so you got a quote from a New York Times best-selling author. I don't know who Margaret George is. Is she historical fiction author as well? I should probably know that. But I don't. Patricia Bracewell, I'm pretty sure she's an historical fiction author as well. So if those are names that are going to resonate with your audience, I would try and work them into the ad or the ad text, especially if you have a quote from them. And if there are names that are not going to resonate with your audience, they're just taking up space when you have very little of it. In this ad image context, at least, you would certainly use it somewhere like here, where it layers on further social proof and convinces on-the-fence readers to click the buy button. But I would look for something that really jumps out and nails down the genre. And I would spend a bit of time going through the reviews until I found something that really resonated. And not just something positive like, this is a great book. I don't think those generic statements work as best as something that's really tied to the genre. Like if someone said like the best Viking novel I've ever read, that's going in the ad or the ad text or somewhere. And it doesn't matter who says it, as long as somebody said it in a review somewhere. I feel like it's fair game. Yeah, so you can go in and you can filter by 5-star reviews. They tend to have more positive things to say than my 1-star reviews anyway. So there's something like this: a riveting story filled with action. Okay, it's not perfect because it doesn't mention the genre, but at least it mentions qualities that are exciting to people who read those kind of books. Historical fiction mightn't be the most naturally action-packed type of book, but it's a good quote to delineate it from the other kind of historical fiction, the kind of slower paced, more character driven, more kind of women's fiction, family saga type of historical fiction. Whereas this might be more plot driven, might have more action in it. And if that's the case, like I would know that about my own book if I'd written it. So if that's the case, I would look for a quote like that, and that can really help square the genre for readers, because you don't want to get clicks from just anybody. You want to get the right readers. You want them clicking, you want them buying, you want them joining your list and buying the rest of your series. And you want the right readers clicking and buying and all that, so it trains Amazon's algorithms to recommend your books to the right people. If you get lots of people clicking and buying who are into a different kind of book, then Amazon is going to start recommending your book to all the wrong people. And you don't want that. You only want the right people. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there for this one. I might come back to it once I've looked through the reviews and maybe found a nice little quote. But even like that simple, it's going to work. And just when you have a very simple design like this, it very easily translates into a BookBub ad. And I'll just show you with the resizing tool here. So 300 by 250, that's the tiny size of a BookBub ad. And often when I'm converting to a BookBub ad, I might have to take out an element or two. Like if I have a couple of things in there, like if I have a price tag and a review quote or a couple of different banners, often it's too crowded because the BookBub ad is actually about that size. So it's like almost like 2 inches by 3 inches. It's pretty small. So if you have lots of banners and small writing, it's just going to be mud and people's eyes will bounce over it and they won't click. So it's automatically resized this and it's done a pretty good job of it. I might lose some of the zoom there and just draw that across a bit so you can actually get more of the sword and the armor and her pose. I think that works a bit better. Something like that, maybe. Because BookBub is smaller, we've got to make some compromises because you still want to be able to see the cover, Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Now, because it's BookBub and it's smaller, I would make this part bigger. And what might seem obnoxiously large on a Facebook ad, which is around this size, on a BookBub ad, it's going to be like this. So, yeah, we'd probably pretty that up a little bit. That was a little bit shoddy. That's totally a sign that I want to eat a sandwich. So I'm going to go and do that now and hopefully come back and do a couple more covers suitably sated. Oh, I can't leave that like that. Okay, see, this is where it gets tricky. Sometimes you need to move things out of the way. That's because of the layers. I can go in and fiddle with it, but sometimes it's easier just to go in and lift them out of it. Yeah, I'd probably do something like that. Again, I tend to fuss over these things for like an interminable amount of time, often while eating a sandwich. And but that's a decent ad. I think, that could be very effective. Okay, I think that's enough for today. I think that went pretty well. I had fun anyway, and I hope you learned something from it. I think what we'll do for the next episode, we'll certainly work through the covers a lot quicker. I just wanted to establish some basic principles here first, especially about composition. And that's why I wanted to go through the first two book covers a little more slowly, and then we sped things up a bit. And I'd like to keep up that pace in future episodes. What I would like to focus on in the next episode is finessing things a little bit more, making those buttons a bit more pro, choosing the right fonts for the genre. So we might revisit a couple of those covers where I wasn't 100% happy with the finished result. I think it just needed one more step. I think it'd be useful to show you that, how you can just make one little tweak to a reasonably good design just to start getting better results from it. And we'll definitely dive into the pile of covers here and pick some more new ones out to start from scratch too, and see if we can solve a few more design challenges. And if you want your chance to submit to the image workshop, make sure to sign up to my mailing list because it's a subscriber-only exclusive for my mailing list. You get a bunch of other free stuff too. You get access to a free video marketing a free video course on book marketing. You get a free guide to self-publishing. You get all sorts of stuff. So I really recommend signing up. You can even sign up, grab the free stuff, and then leave. I don't mind one bit. But you do need to be on my list to submit your cover, your book for the image workshop. I got to warn you though, I've already got 200 or 300 submissions, but I see myself doing lots of these though because I had such a good time.